How are you feeling about the confidence vote? What do you think is going to happen?
I'm confident.
We're going to keep making Parliament work.
We're ready for a confidence vote. I think it's important that we actually get this, the first one out of the way.
Canadians they already face a lot of uncertainty in their lives. The last thing they want is instability here in Ottawa.
There's a time to do work and there's a time to vote. There's a time for policy and a time for politics.
What we do in this place matters, and it has real and tangible consequences on the lives of Canadians.
Liberal MPs say they are confident they can survive next week's confidence vote, and with the support of the Bloc Québécois, that is likely the case. But what would need to fall into place to send Canadians to the polls? If the government loses the support of the majority of MPs on a matter of confidence, then the government falls and we head into an election. Now, let's do some math. There are 154 Liberals in the House, but House Speaker Greg Fergus doesn't vote except in the event of a tie. If all the other MPs vote, then the Conservatives would need the support of the Bloc Québécois and the NDP to bring down the government. In this scenario, even the support of the Greens and the independent MPs wouldn't save the Liberals. Now, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says his party won't back Poilievre's non-confidence motion, but we've yet to hear how the NDP plans to vote. Peter Julian is the NDP House leader, and he joins me now in the studio. Mr. Julian, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be with you.
So the Bloc Québécois has made clear their intentions. They're not going to vote with the Conservatives when this confidence vote comes to a vote on Wednesday. Well, what are the New Democrats going to do?
Well, Jagmeet Singh will be speaking to the country tomorrow, and so you'll hear our intentions at that. Tomorrow he'll be addressing the country in the same way he did a couple weeks ago around the ending the confidence and supply agreement. And certainly you saw yesterday a viral video of him confronting those bullies, these right-wing bullies on Parliament Hill. Again, something that went viral. And so he'll be announcing, and I'm sure it'll get the same level of interest as what we've seen over the last few weeks in the NDP.
Okay, so wait a second. He's going to speak to the country and announce how he's going to vote as a party next week in a video? Is that what we can
Tomorrow
anticipate?
He'll be announcing, yeah.
Okay, so he's not going to do it in Parliament. He's not going to take questions. I mean, this is a parliamentary function. It's just going to be done on his socials. How is this going to work, Mr. Julian?
In the same way we did with confidence and supply. He put it out, then he took questions, you'll recall.
A day later,
Yeah, and he'll be on Parliament Hill tomorrow, so he would be responding to questions at that time. The important thing is, and he spelled that out a couple weeks ago, and the NDP caucus is completely united around the idea that we move forward vote by vote through the course of the coming session. And we did that during COVID. It was to the immense benefit of most Canadians. We certainly saw more supports for small businesses, for seniors, for students, for families, for people with disabilities. All of that came as a result of sick leave paid time for the first time. All of this came as a result of the NDP. Vote by vote, assuming what was best in the public interest and pushing hard for that to become a reality. And so we're going back to that practice for the course of the fall session.
Okay, but the Conservatives have rather tactically written a very simple confidence motion, essentially saying the House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. That's pretty plain. The Bloc Québécois looked at it and said, look, we're not in the business of replacing Justin Trudeau with Pierre Poilievre. We want to use our time to negotiate for the benefit of Quebecers in particular. You must know what you want to do with that motion. I mean, if you vote with the Conservatives on this one, how do you ever side with the government on another one? Because if you vote for a no confidence motion, how do you come back from that?
Well, first off, I'm not going to speculate on the impacts of the vote because I'm going to let our leaders speak to the country tomorrow. And so that's an important message. And certainly there's been far more interest in the NDP over the course of the last few months because of Jagmeet Singh's leadership. He has the highest approval rating in the country. The NDP, as a party now, has the largest universe of support, first or second choices. Obviously, we have to get more of those second choices to be first choices. But the 50% of Canadians looking at the NDP seriously is very similar to what we saw under Jack Layton. And we know the results of that and the momentum and the support that came. But the reality is we are taking into consideration for every vote that we take over the course of the fall, what is in the public interest, and taking into effect as well the kinds of things that you're mentioning that we take into consideration as we proceed vote by vote through this parliamentary session.
Is every vote going to be done by video release, or are you going to be able to sit down and tell people? I mean, like you've been on the show many times saying the NDP are the adults in the room. figures like we should be able to have a grown-up conversation about how you're going to vote rather than wait for a video release. I mean, that's kind of gimmicky, don't you think? Is that how this is all going to be done every time we have a confidence motion?
I think it's fair to say, I have an enormous respect for your work and for this program, but when you put out that kind of message and it's seen by millions of Canadians, that is a very effective way of making sure that Canadians all hear the message. And confidence in supply, it went viral. Millions of Canadians actually saw the message directly from Jagmeet Singh. We've seen the results, the approval ratings that are now much higher than Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau's. So it is one tool that we use. Right. And I would say Jagmeet Singh uses that tool very effectively to reach Canadians directly so that they can actually hear that message firsthand. Then, of course, unlike Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh responds to questions from journalists, and that is an important part of parliamentary democracy as well. So I would, I guess, disagree with you on if I don't announce it on the program, that's somehow not showing proper respect for democracy. Putting that out and making sure all Canadians see it, that's the most effective way, making sure Canadians hear the message and hear it directly from our leader.
I would never accuse you of not having proper respect for democracy. It's just it was an unusual way to announce the supply and confidence agreement, and so I guess. Is this a video every time there's a vote, or is this video going to tell us more than how you're going to vote on Wednesday? Will this lay down markers on how the New Democrats are clearly going to function one way or another for the duration of this Parliament? Because if you're going to do this, it has to say something significant rather than giving us how you're going to vote in a vote we know will fail on Wednesday.
And that is a great series of questions that if I answer...
You get fired?
No, no, I don't get fired. But that, I think, takes away from what people will see tomorrow. So we'll let the leader speak tomorrow and respond. You will see when... you hear his message and see his message.
So when tomorrow? When are we going to hear this? Like before question period, before the House sits? Like when will we know?
It'll be through the course of the day tomorrow. I would expect well before question period.
The Canadian Health Coalition, which is not unfriendly to the New Democratic Party of Canada, is urging MPs not to support the Conservatives in the non-confidence vote. Does that factor in your decision making?
Well, we've worked very closely with the Canadian Health Coalition. They've been a big part of the successes around dental care. And I do want to note, because it's important, 650,000 Canadians have already gotten dental care in the first 19 weeks of the NDP's dental care program. It would not have happened without Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. And pharmacare is also something that I know millions of Canadians are waiting for diabetes, for contraception. We're talking about millions of Canadians that would benefit from pharmacare. So
all at risk if the Conservatives get what they want, though, right?
Obviously, it is something that we take into consideration. In the message tomorrow, I think, you will see to what effect that has been taken into consideration. The important thing is all of these policies, I think, are put into peril by Mr. Poilievre. He wants to cut everything. And the reality is the Conservatives haven't even had the decency and the honesty to say to Canadians, yes, we're going to cut dental care. Yes, we want to stop pharmacare in its tracks. And I find that very unfortunate, disserving of democracy when you have the Conservatives hiding their agenda, which is an agenda, as we saw when they were in power, of massive cuts, including to veterans and to seniors over the course of their mandate.
I want to touch on something just as a final point that you mentioned right off the top. You talked about Jagmeet Singh going viral in his video. He seems to be going viral this week as he's losing his voice as the week goes on. He's got a bug of some sort. But you talked about his confrontation with the protesters yesterday and standing up to someone described as a bully. In his tweet last night, your leader said, "This is the Canada Pierre Poilievre wants." Why do you think it's fair game to say that about the Conservative leader, sort of blaming this confrontation on what you saw there on Pierre Poilievre? Why do you think it's okay for your leader to do that? Because they've pushed back. Michael Cooper, they say, was just out to dinner when he ran into these protesters. Why?
There's no secret. Pierre Poilievre supported the extremist convoy protesters. We saw what misery that provoked in Ottawa. You saw it firsthand. So did I. Businesses shut down. Seniors not able to get their groceries. People with disabilities not able to get their medication because of this incredible blockade that had huge negative implications for Ottawa, and we saw this right across the country, including criminal charges that have now been brought to a number of participants, and Pierre Poilievre supported all of those actions, and I find it deplorable. So there is no doubt that Conservatives have been encouraging this type of behavior, and I think it's time for the Conservatives to do some self-reflection on what they're trying to provoke and take a step back, because that's certainly not the Conservative Party that former Conservative leaders, including Aaron O'Toole and Joe Clark and Robert Stanfield and so many others, would have actually tolerated amongst the Conservative Party. They need to back off from that direction.
Okay. NDP House Leader Peter Julian, thank you for coming in and not just answering our request with a video. We look forward to seeing what your leader has to say tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We need to fire this costly carbon tax coalition so we can elect a common sense government that will bring it home for them.
He wants to cut programs, make Canadians suffer, so he can sit in the big chair.
Well, things are heating up on Parliament Hill as Conservatives make good on their promise to try and force an early election. Next week, Pierre Poilievre will table a motion that simply reads, the House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. But already one opposition party plans to vote against it.
If you want me to vote for you on a non-confidence motion, say something about the government not fostering the independence of Quebec. And Poilievre would say, well, I can't do that. So that's the issue. I am not a Conservative. I'm a Quebecer. I'm a Bloc member. I serve Quebec's interests. And replacing one by the other makes no sense and would not make sense for Quebecers.
All right, it's time to bring in the power panel on this. Cameron Ahmad is a former head of communications to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. James Moore is a former Conservative cabinet minister. Jordan Leichnitz is a former NDP strategist. And here with me in the studio, Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of The Hill Times, who is dreading all of these confidence motions just as much as I am in terms of how it affects our day. All right, Jordan, I want to start with you because the New Democrats are the missing piece in this vote puzzle, unless the Liberals surprise us and vote no confidence in themselves. But the Bloc have said they're not going to do it. Jagmeet Singh is going to tell us how he's going to vote in a video release tomorrow. It's a pretty clear motion. They know it's not going to pass. Why do it by video? What do you make of it?
Well, I think that if you're the NDP, obviously you don't want to squander any moment of attention or opportunity for media. And so this is just about stretching that out and being able to tell a story in their own frame. So even though the destination of the vote is a foregone conclusion at this point, there's still an opportunity here for Singh to get his message through, and I think he's going to use it. They found that tactic worked fairly well for them around the confidence and supply agreement, so they're giving it another go this time.
Do you think they're going to do it with every vote, or will they just lay down what their marker is and their plan for the whole session? I mean, are we going to get video of the week from him?
I mean, he does make a lot of videos, but I don't think you're going to be seeing a video for every vote, no. I think that, look, they are going to be going vote by vote, and they're obviously quite earnest about that in the sense that there will be, I think, at various points, different tests laid out for the government about things that they can get out of the Liberals that are in line with their priorities, and they'll be squeezing them for that ahead of each and every vote. But whether they communicate that through video or through other means, I think that'll evolve with time.
So, James, the wording of this is pretty sparse and blunt and simple and direct. The House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. Why do you think they chose to make it that and not about, say, the carbon tax, which is what Pierre Poilievre repeatedly says they want to fight this election over?
Well, I think to simplify and emphasize what the ballot question is in the next campaign, right? Do you want change or do you want more of the same? And just simple as that. So they're skating towards where the puck is and is going to be going for some time, which is just a flat out question of, do you want to keep Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in office or don't you? It's straight up. With regard to Mr. Singh and his video message tomorrow, it's, he's laying in wait. The Bloc Québécois come out. They say they're going to vote to keep the Liberals in power. I imagine tomorrow will be a very stern and clear and proud and self-righteous message from Jagmeet Singh about how the Liberals just needed to do more. And, Mr. Singh, quotes, tore up the confidence and supply agreement and he wanted to be independent. And now, you may as well hit delete on the email tomorrow because it just doesn't matter. I mean, he's leading the NDP into continued irrelevance. And tomorrow's message is, frankly, it doesn't matter. The Bloc Québécois have the Liberals back now, and the NDP can pretend to be righteous and important, but they're really not.
Well, Cameron, Yves-François Blanchet saved me from a weekend of doing laundry to get ready for an election campaign and maybe having to travel around the country at a moment's notice. But this is, the second week of Parliament we get to this, and we're seeing some positioning from the different parties in what Mr. Blanchet described as a game of chicken with 4 cars that will ultimately lead to a collision and wreckage. How do you see the dynamic after how things played out today?
Well, I think Mr. Blanchet actually has a pretty good ability to be clear and direct sometimes when he's talking about these things, especially in Parliament. And he's in a good position right now. He's set himself up to be in a good position to hold the Liberals to his demands and have quite a bit of leverage in Parliament. I agree with James that I think the messaging from the Conservatives is very clear. They've set up a very simple question for Canadians and for everyone else in Parliament about whether they want change or more of the same. For the NDP, they're in a really tough spot. I still think that the message they sent when they dropped the agreement with the Liberals was unclear. I assume that this decision to announce their decision through a video is, as Jordan said, gives them an ability to frame their message the way they want, but also generate more attention. They still have a lot of work to do to actually explain where they stand and how they've positioned themselves to be the true alternative to the Conservatives. The big problem in question is it's going to be hard for the government to govern because all of the focus right now is going to be on potentially every week questions about confidence and continued focus on leadership questions and polling.
Well, and Sherelle, today in question period, I don't know how closely everybody watched it, but it wasn't really about governing. It was about sort of just fighting and insulting and why don't you just call the election and give people what they want. And a prime minister who seems far more aggressive since the summer break and walking into these endless confidence motion tests. What do you make of it all?
Well, it's one of those things you're like, oh, good, I have this to look forward to for who knows how long. So that's always in the back of your mind. But at the same time, I mean, on one hand, there's an element of strategy here to say, yes, let's call this vote. You can have this vote next week. Let's kind of get it out of the way, so to speak, until the next one comes along that's more prescribed, like some sort of money motion in terms of a non-confidence vote, because the government doesn't have to let the opposition parties have these days and put forward these motions. They could backload them till, the end of the sitting, pretty much, right?
And force a Christmas election type thing, if you want to go that way.
Exactly. So to say, the government can easily say, hey, you had your shot, it didn't work, let's move on with it and get to this issue of governing, which we aren't able to do because everybody is so, head up over will they or won't they. I don't know if that's going to be the way they'll do it because it would look really heavy-handed to say no supply days for you at any point during the sitting. But yeah, we do see, like you said, we do see a slightly more aggressive prime minister. We do see slightly more aggressive, everybody. The summer didn't do anybody any favors. Nobody looks well rested unless they look rested enough to come back with this kind of vigor to fight with each other, which is essentially what we've got. Sure, the Conservatives put forward a motion that they said that they can say is, very clear, very unambiguous. Do you support the government? Do you not support the government? But this is politics. And it's always going to be politics, and it's never as clear and as simple as, 12 words on a page.
Yeah, so Jordan, what can Jagmeet Singh say in this video tomorrow that's going to be interesting and newsworthy? Because we know Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives, they have 5 opposition days between now and Christmas, so we're going to see more of this. Does he just say, when we're ready to bring down the government, it'll be our opposition day motion, we'll call the confidence vote, we're not going to play games to help Pierre Poilievre? What does he do to sort of carve out clear, meaningful space in this sort of political argument?
Well, I think that the question of the Conservative gamesmanship around this is an important one, and you're probably going to see him hit on that. The idea that this is a stunt from Poilievre, somebody who's more interested in gumming up the procedural works than actually getting down to work and getting things done in Parliament, which is something the NDP will really want to contrast with what they've been doing in terms of getting things out of the government, things like pharmacare, dental care, all of those types of concessions that they've won from the Liberals. So they're going to want to draw that contrast there. And I think that there is actually a risk for the Conservatives over time. This can backfire. If you continue to hit that button and do this all the time, there is a risk that you just look obstructionist instead of interested in actually helping people.
James, do you see it that way? Because they've kind of been being obstructionist, and I don't say that as a judgment. That's just the way committees work now, the way Parliament works now, a minority Parliament with a Conservative Party that has the polling lead and the financial lead. It hasn't seemed to have hurt them, So what do you think?
Well, look, they're the official opposition. They're the alternative government. They're 15 to 20 points up in the polls. 2 out of 3 Liberal voters in the last campaign don't want Justin Trudeau to be the Prime Minister anymore. They're reflecting what their mandate is and what they aspire their mandate to be in the next campaign. It's up for the Liberals to put forward efforts to make Parliament work and to do so. And with regard to obstructionism, you know, I remember when we were in government and Liberals and the NDP got together and we had round-the-clock voting all night and committees didn't work and obstruction. Like, it's kind of sort of standard fare for Parliament. And if you're in the official opposition, if you lost confidence in the government, then you actually don't want the government doing stuff because you don't have confidence in what they're doing. And so you use your parliamentary tactics in order to try to stop them from harming the country that you love. That's your mindset. And whether people roll their eyes and disagree with that or not, that's how Parliament works, is you put forward and you use the tools at your disposal to stop the government from getting worse. And that's what the job of the opposition is to do.
Cameron, I wonder what you thought of what we're seeing from Justin Trudeau. They have a situation where they don't have a partner anymore, and unlike the last couple of minority parliaments, or the current one, but in the aftermath of the elections that delivered them, there's no leadership crisis on the Conservative side. They're ready to go. So he has adopted this more aggressive attack stance that we saw in question period. What do you make of this move?
Well, I think it is to a degree good to see him more aggressive because he is the subject of very aggressive attacks every single day. I mean, that is the approach of the Conservative leader. That's what they've deemed to be the best way to go after him, is to be very forceful and basically say that everything going wrong in the country and to a degree the world is his fault. So he does have to push back on that. You can't be blind or you can't ignore that reality. So I think it is good, and he can be very, very effective, and he can communicate very well when he's pushing back on these specific attacks. I think what we'll probably see them do, especially if Parliament becomes more obstructionist, as it's likely to become, and James is entirely right, that is just how our system works, and that is how the parties behave, whomever is in power and who's in opposition. But I think what they're going to try and do is actually focus on the accomplishments. We know that despite their unpopularity as a government, many of the things they have done, many of the things that they have implemented for the country and for people are popular. They'll try and focus on that, and they'll say, this is what you're going to lose. This is what disappears if a Conservative government is elected. And it's also an effective way for them to attack the NDP, because many of these things, especially recent accomplishments, have been done in partnership with them. So the NDP, by kind of following the Conservative lead, is putting those things at risk too.
Sherelle, what do you make of what we're seeing, that dynamic? It's a different kind of tone and approach from the Prime Minister post-caucus and post-by-election defeat. But obviously no leadership change, no big change of staff, no big pivot on policy, but it's more of a tactical and tonal shift.
Yeah, it's a tactical and tonal shift, and there was a lot of talk after the Toronto St. Paul's by-election that we really do need to look inwards and take some time for self-reflection, and at least that's what we were hearing from kind of the people more on the periphery, or cabinet and other MPs, less so from the Prime Minister himself, who talked more about we need to connect more with people and get them engaged and tell them basically how great we actually are and are doing. I don't know if we actually had that over the summer. In heading into the Monday's by-elections, I don't know if we actually really had that introspection that everybody was kind of saying, that I think we actually really do need this to find a different mindset. So now what we are seeing is, okay, well, instead of changing the message, we're just going to change how we're delivering the message. Right. I don't know if it's working. I guess we will see. They're going to road test it, it seems. And, we had the Prime Minister out calling the Pierre Poilievre, a liar, and, being really, really forthright with the things that he was saying, which we hadn't really seen so much. That was more left to some of the other cabinet ministers. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if people people do want to see a fight. I don't know if they want to see him take on this fight with these messages.
It's interesting, where people didn't see a fight, or at least MPs didn't see a fight, was in the Liberal caucus today. Talking to people in National Caucus after losing that by-election, not a lot of pushback, not a lot of challenging the leadership, just sort of, okay, here's where we are, here's where we go.
Resignation.
Yeah, yes, not capital R, resignation, but resigned to where they are. Okay, I want to talk about what happened with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and he's defending his decision to confront two hecklers, we'll call them, on Parliament Hill this week after they yelled insults at him. It was all captured on video. Here's a bit of what happened.
Was it you or not? If it was me, I'd admit it. What'd you say then? I didn't say nothing. It wasn't me. It was a gentleman behind me, I guess.
Who is it then? Point it out.
I have no idea who it was, buddy.
My word, you sure it's not you?
No, 100%.
You're a coward. You're not going to say it to my face. That's what's up.
Say what?
Okay, today in a social media post, Singh called the men bullies and said they've been harassing politicians, staff, and journalists. He also said what happened to him is the kind of Canada Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants. And the Liberals picked up on that, accusing one Conservative MP, Michael Cooper, of hanging out with a group of protesters, as photos of Cooper circulated online of him at a downtown restaurant with the so-called Wellington Street regulars.
I think the sad part in this is that Pierre Poilievre continues to play footsies with these guys. His own members of parliament are out laughing it up and drinking with these guys.
These people have been arrested before, they've been charged before, they're harassing people who are just trying to do their work. That behavior is not acceptable. He should answer to his constituents for that.
Now, Michael Cooper has since issued a statement accusing the Liberals and the NDP of spreading lies. Cooper says he has no association with the group, and he was approached by them for photos while he was simply out at a restaurant for dinner. We're going to talk about that with the Power Panel. Jordan, let's start with you. What do you make of how Mr. Singh responded, how he connected it to Pierre Poilievre, how the Liberals have grabbed onto it, and the pushback from the Conservatives?
Yeah, well, we're just having a moment in our politics, eh?
Yeah.
I think it's, the type of harassment that MPs, politicians, party leaders get is, I think, really difficult for people who aren't involved in politics to understand. It's gotten to a level that is really frightening for a lot of them. And I think in this particular case, we're talking about some individuals who are involved in regular, protests, but really also harassment, who just, he had enough, right? And so he told them what he thought about it. And I think he was sort of well within his rights to do that. And it obviously resonated with a lot of people because there's been a lot of folks viewing that clip and saying that it sort of felt good to see somebody push back on that kind of bullying. And I think with respect to the tweet, it's very fair for Mr. Singh to take that interaction and to use it in the way that he sees politically fit. He's right to draw a link between Pierre Poilievre and these groups. Pierre Poilievre was out cheering on some of these folks and the organizations that they're linked to during the convoy occupation of the downtown. And that's something that is not often talked about anymore. So I think he saw an opportunity to bring it full circle there and used it.
James, your thoughts?
Well, I thought Jagmeet Singh took an opportunity. When I first saw the video, I thought, good for Jagmeet Singh standing up for himself. But then I very quickly pivoted to two thoughts. One was, better be careful. Better be careful, because at some point, someone will take a poke at him. Mm-hmm. And we live in a society where social media has closed the distance from politicians and people in public in general, athletes, celebrities, everything else, where we feel like we intimately know these people because, they tweet pictures of themselves, doing all kinds of things. And so it's closed sort of the social intimacy distance. And so sometimes people think they can close the physical distance. So what Jagmeet Singh did, I would not recommend he replicate, and I would not recommend others do it, because there are people out there that are angry enough and bent enough that they might take a poke at him or others. So that was my very quickly where I arrived at. And then finally, with regard to his tweet and saying, well, this is the kind of Canada Pierre Poilievre wants, that was really a cheap shot. Jordan may be right about the politics of this, and maybe he can squeeze a little juice out of that in terms of animating people. People going, yeah, that's kind of the Canada Pierre Poilievre wants. There's no evidence of that. It's not the kind of person Pierre is. Pierre has been victim, by the way, of this kind of stuff himself, death threats and people throwing stuff at him and attacking him. When I was in government, I had death threats. I had people mocking my son's health. It's still out there on an NDP website, by the way. I looked at it the other day. It's still there. People making fun of my son. So politics can get really ugly and really gross. But when it comes to the physical stuff, Jagmeet might think that he had a moment here of righteousness, and I don't doubt his sincerity and the anger that he felt at that moment of people being as they were. But I would recommend that he and others don't replicate this, because we don't want this to get uglier than it is.
Cameron, what do you make of this?
Look, it's certainly dangerous. And, I had very unfortunate memories of the 2021 campaign when I saw this video. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of, when pretty much anywhere we went, the Prime Minister would be surrounded by sometimes hundreds of very extreme protesters. I mean, every right to protest, we expect that all the time, but who would hurl the most hideous insults and say violent things, threaten his family, threaten staff, threaten journalists. I think, unfortunately, since that moment, there hasn't been any reckoning. There hasn't been any deep reflection between all parties and everyone who participates in politics as to how we deal with this and how we tackle it. The other thing that that I thought of was the fact that politicians are also human beings, right? And they're subjected to the same type of emotions that any of us are, anybody else watching would be. I mean, how would a regular person just react if they're hurled those types of horrible insults? And I think there's an added layer of pain and frustration when there's racism laced into it. I'm not saying this particular interaction, but Jagmeet Singh has certainly been the victim of racist attacks as well. So I think there's, yes, it is dangerous to react in a moment like that to someone who's attacking you or threatening you. But you just have to remember that these people are human beings, and it's going down a dangerous and scary path. And I think as a society, we just need to remember that we're so lucky to live in a country where we can actually participate in our democracy without behaving this way. So how can all parties figure out how we respond to this and promote democratic participation that is peaceful and positive and based on ideas?
Yeah, I remember being assigned to your campaign in 2021. I think it was in Coburg, and it was at an evening whistle stop, and we got swarmed. And they were obviously there to go after Justin Trudeau, but when they recognized the CBC reporter, it got very uncomfortable for me. I'm not going to lie, it was unpleasant. Sherelle, we've got the situation now. This is like all over the parliamentary precinct. I think where this confrontation happened, it wasn't at the main door, it was one of the back doors. And I saw today parliamentary security escorting MPs across Wellington Street to get to Parliament Hill because of this interaction and what's going on right now on the steps of the House of Commons.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably other countries who kind of look at Canada and go, really? Like, you can just walk up to people at the doors and, say whatever you want to them. The fact that we have such an open parliamentary precinct and people are available and accessible is probably pretty different from a lot of other places. And I'm not saying that, shutting things down is the answer. That's all that's really going to do right now is just push the problem further out to a further boundary and to the point where there aren't people to escort them. There aren't PPS to, help protect MPs and senators. So it really does have to a degree, start from within. And we aren't, as much as people, anytime something like this happens, as much as people, condemn it and they say this shouldn't happen, then they also turn around and they're calling their colleagues names. And people are they're emulating this behavior. They're saying, oh, this is how you gain favor. This is how you get ahead. This is how you do these things. And so there's been this ongoing push within the House of Commons for MPs who are looking to find ways to kind of mitigate harassment, like kind of within their own ranks. How do we go about and stop being harassed by or having harassment instigated by our colleagues in the House of Commons? And it hasn't been a clear path. Like, they can't agree on how to do that because they can fall back and say, well, that's this politics and that's the political element. If you take that away, what do we have left? Well, you have this, and you get the people who are interested in politics because they see it as a very combative place to be, and then you're going to push out all the people who don't want to be and work in that environment constantly. So, as the other said, it is dangerous. Yes, Jagmeet Singh can defend himself. He shouldn't have to. There's lots of people who cannot, and so therefore there are lots of people who don't want to put themselves in that situation where this happens all the time.
Jordan, it's interesting that the statement from MP Michael Cooper says that this is a false allegation. It's a lie. He has no association with these people, and I take him at his word. I have no proof that he was doing anything other than going there to get dinner. But his leader is accusing Jagmeet Singh of holding up an election to get his pension, which they say is a lie. So suddenly everyone is very upset about false allegations about motivations and who you're associated with. And when it comes to these guys protesting outside the House of Commons, only one party brought them donuts during the occupation, right? So where does this go with sort of the insinuation on motivation, character, and behavior?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I think particularly coming from Michael Cooper, somebody who's maybe not noted for the high road that they take in their own rhetoric, I find it all a bit rich. But this is something that there has to be a decision made among all parties, whether we're going to sort of feed this type of politics, whether we're going to give it a space within mainstream politics. And I think that, frankly, that's one of the things that I found really troubling about what happened during the convoy occupation, when you did see a number of politicians, by no means all members of the Conservative Party, but some, who went in there and were basically giving a platform to folks with very extreme, sometimes violent rhetoric. And I think that we really just have to make an agreement altogether that's something we're not going to platform.
So, you know, James, it feels a bit like we're a sequel to our conversation last week about when Tom Clark was at committee and the way, you know, he was sort of criticized there and the conversation we had about politics. But in this one, after Jagmeet Singh said what he said on Twitter, Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anna, went on Twitter and said, "I'm sorry you got harassed. It has nothing to do with my husband." She then pivoted the blame to Justin Trudeau and his policies. You know, family weighing into this stuff is an interesting thing, right? Like, we try to keep them out of it, you know?
Yeah, but look, I agree with what Jordan said about platforming these people, but who's platforming, quote, these people? Jagmeet Singh is platforming them and saying that these are like Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre is like them. Therefore, if you don't like these people getting in Jagmeet Singh, this is the kind of Canada that Pierre Poilievre wants. I mean, this is...
Is that platforming them, though? I mean, I have watched convoy organizers hold a press conference in the west block of the parliamentary buildings, right?
But let's have no illusions about this. Jagmeet Singh loves that video clip. He loves that. He loves that we're talking about this. He loves that he looks brave and tough, and everything that was said about his emotions being sincere, I totally believe. And as I said, when I first saw that video clip, I thought, good for Jagmeet Singh for standing up for himself. Absolutely, because there's way too much of that in our politics. But then I thought, wait a minute, he loves the fact that this video is out there, making him look tough and standing up against these creepy weirdos who are getting in his face. Loves it. So and then now he's trying to sort of bring Pierre in and sort of position Pierre next to them and say, this is all of a kind and I'm against them. Therefore, he loves this, and I don't love this. I think this is awful in every way. I don't think Jagmeet Singh should feel threatened going to work. I don't think these weirdos should be wandering around Parliament Hill yelling things and threatening people. And I don't think our politics should be going down this road, but here we are. And, you know, it's just really uncomfortable. And the unfortunate thing for your viewers and for Canadians is every day between now and whenever the campaign is, I think I'll bet all the money in my pocket against yours that it's going to get worse and worse and uglier and dumber and more gross as we go by. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the spiral we're in.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, I've had to get the police involved because of things that have been said about me and my family on social media. It's an unpleasant thing. We're just trying to be a grown-up doing a job. We got like a minute left, Cameron. 30 seconds to you, and then Sherelle with the last word.
Yeah, I mean, James is right, and I felt that way in the last election. I mean, being on the ground and seeing these gatherings of people, we'd see them bring their kids out sometimes, like kids under the age of 10, saying the most awful things. And look, I don't think it's actually helpful in this conversation to be pointing fingers, but there is truth to what Jordan is saying, and the fact that, you know, politicians of all stripes, in this case, these are extreme people from the far right who are very regularly saying horrible things about politicians and sometimes threatening them. Let's all just be thoughtful, and politicians all have this very deep responsibility to be thoughtful about how, whether, when they engage with these people and what they're doing to try and elevate our toxic politics, or whether they're feeding into it.
Okay, Sherelle, last word.
Well, I'd just say that the people who are most likely to get hurt by this aren't the ones in the House of Commons, aren't the ones who have the benefit of security and friendly protective services. The people who are on the periphery, you know, marginalized, racialized, women, all of those, those are the people who are going to be most hurt by this. So while everybody's kind of bickering with each other, that's who's actually going to be taking the heat.
Yep, young staffers who have moved here for their dream job on Parliament Hill, having to walk through that gauntlet of abuse is that's a rough way to start your career.
Or the late great or the late great wonderful young Canadian Corporal Nathan Cirillo.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, a good note to end it on. I want to thank you all. Thank the Power Panel, Sherelle Evelyn, Cameron Ahmad, James Moore, and Jordan Leibniz. We have